Kevin Kirksey is a shining example of it's not what happens to us, but what we do with what happens to us. He's here to talk about his book, Life 2.0, A Journey from Near Death to New Life. Welcome to the show, Kevin. I'm really excited to have you here after reading your story. Just a phenomenal story. I know you'll help a lot of people who watch today.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Let's start from the beginning. You have a really remarkable medical story that's turned into like a life story, right? It's changed the whole direction of your life. But let's talk about how you weren't feeling sick, you weren't having symptoms, you weren't ignoring anything. You had gone to see your doctor and in passing mention or ask him a question. Tell us about that day and what led up to it and what happened.
Yeah, it was just a routine day to go to see my doctor once a year. I wouldn't say that I really took my health in my own hands. I certainly do now, but you know, I had my 15 minutes of fame where the doctor told me, hey, you know, go lose some weight, take your blood sugar medication, exercise, and we'll see you in 6 months, we'll see you in a year. And I'm leaving that appointment, and right when I get to the door, I stop and I turn and I asked the doctor a question. He was my doctor for probably 15 years at that point in time. So I said, hey, doc, I got a question for you. Is there something we should check on the inside of my body? I know that sounds strange. I know it sounds weird because I feel great. I'm just curious. He thought about it, and he said, yeah, maybe you should go do a coronary calcium scan, which is, I said, what is that? And he said, oh, it's pretty easy. You lay down, it takes pictures for 10 minutes and off you go. And it gives you a score. If you score 0, you're good to go. Everything's fine. If you score something greater than 0, then maybe we have to do some more testing. And so I left his office. I walked past radiology on the way out to my car, and I stopped in there. I said, hey, is this where you do these tests? And they said, yes. They got my name and they said, I see you need to take one of these. We can take you right now. Would you like to do it? And I said, no, I'm too busy. I've got to get back to work. They said, well, how about Monday? This was on a Friday. And I said, sure. And I said, sure, kind of flippantly, just to get out of the situation. I really wasn't that serious about going back there and taking that test. So that's how this all started.
How do you know why your doctor, was it your age? Was it just, why was that something that came to his mind? Is that a conversation you ever had?
No, we really didn't. There was a tiny bit of cardiac disease in my family. My father had a mild heart attack when he was in his mid-50s. And I don't even know if my doctor knew that at that point in time. But that's really the history that we had. I was a little overweight. I was very busy in my career, lots of traveling, probably wasn't taking the greatest care of myself. And so, you know, he just really, I think, wanted to answer that question and address something that might be a good logical thing to go do. But it was not based upon any concern that he had or that I had had.
Right. I was wondering if it was like a standard, you reach a certain age, that's something that he might recommend. So that's good to know because, well, and also it depends on the provider. That you might have had a different provider who might not have made that suggestion. So
that's exactly right. And yeah, so that question that just kind of rolled out of my mouth, you know, it really proved to me that it's a question that saved my life, ultimately. It's also a question to me that, in my opinion, proved to me that divine intervention is very real. That was my first experience with that.
Because that question didn't come from you.
No, I had not been thinking about this. I wasn't thinking about it going to the doctor's office. I wasn't thinking about it when I was there. It was right before I got to the door to leave. It just rolled out of my mouth.
So let's talk about then the scan. So you're there, they say, we can see you right now. You say, no, thanks. And then when they offered Monday to you, you say, okay, sure. Did you plan on going on Monday or you just?
No, at that time, no. Over the weekend, I told myself, well, maybe I should go, because I had to get on an airplane and go to California right after that appointment. So I went up and I did the test.
On the same day?
Yeah, the same day. Okay. So I literally went to the doctor's office. They did the test. You know, he told me it was going to be a 10-minute test. In my case, it was like 30 minutes. So I was a little bit annoyed with that. But I get on the plane, I go to California, and just right after I had landed.
So it's not like an EKG where you get the results right away in that moment.
No. It's typically, it's something you get the results and they call you in a couple of days and you know, explain this to you. But I got a call that same day, and I sent it to voicemail because I thought it was just the doctor's office calling me to tell me the good news about my test result. About 10 minutes later, they called again. 5 minutes later, they called again. And I said, okay, somebody's trying to reach me. So I called back, got a hold of the nurse, and I said, her name is Kathy. And I said, Kathy, somebody's trying to reach me. She goes, yeah, Kevin, it was me. She said the results were not good. And I said, well, what does that mean? She goes, it means that it's the worst the doctor's ever seen. And I go,
Wow.
okay, what does that mean? She said, Kevin, I'm sorry. It means you are at an extreme risk of a cardiac event or a stroke at any moment. I was 2,500 miles away from my home and heard that my very next step could be my last. And so I said, what do I do? And she said, we've got an appointment with a cardiologist. You need to see him today. And I said, I'm in California. What do I do? She hesitates, and then she said, can you please remain calm and come home immediately, which I did. And that's where the story really began to unfold.
Could you remain calm?
I've never been told by a medical professional that my next step could be my last. I didn't know what to think. I think I was in a state of shock. I was in a state of disbelief. I was in a state of denial. But I had this incredibly nervous anxiety that I did need to attend to this right away. Something told me, you got to move as fast as you can. And so I got back to Dallas and I went and saw the doctors the next day. They did a bunch of tests and they came to a conclusion that my only chance of survival was to have an open heart cardiac bypass surgery right away. That's what I ultimately did.
Let's take a quick break, and we come back. I want to hear more about you get this, you find out about the surgery. Now your life has changed and you're going into surgery. Was it the very next day?
2 days later.
Okay.
2 days later. They still had to go do some blood work, and they have the process, and they have to schedule time in the OR, et cetera. So 2 days in medical terms is pretty fast.
Pretty fast. Yeah. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Okay.
We're back. We're talking with Kevin Kirksey. He's the author of Life 2.0, A Journey from Near Death to New Life. You'd mentioned in the previous segment that you had a scan that was just something your doctor mentioned casually, as you said, hey, is there anything I need to be doing to check to see that the inside of my body is okay? No symptoms, no complaints. And the nurse called you when you were in California and said, this isn't good. You need to get home as quickly as you can. We didn't talk about what were the results. What is not so good or the worst he'd ever seen? What does that mean? What did it mean?
I had remembered that they said the results was going to be a numerical score. 0 is what you want, and 400 is actually the upper end of the scale. That's what you don't want.
That's broad. Yeah.
That's broad. And so I was on the plane using the Wi-Fi. My wife was using the internet. We were communicating back and forth about this particular test. And we saw that the scale goes from 0 to 400. And everywhere along that spectrum that has a different meaning. So I didn't know what my score was. The very next morning when I was on the way to the cardiologist, I called the nurse and I said, hey, in the shuffle of things, I didn't think to ask what my score was. Well, it wasn't 0, obviously, and it wasn't 400. It was 6,518. It was so far off the chart, I about wrecked my car. And I said, Kathy, that's I don't understand. That cannot be. I haven't seen anything in all of my research that's that large. And she said, Kevin, she said the technician couldn't believe it either. She ran the test 3 consecutive times on you. And that explained to me why it was 30 minutes and not 10. And she said they had calibrated the machine just the day before. That's what your score was. So it's,
And you were annoyed that it took 3 times as long, but
I was annoyed, but I didn't know what she was actually doing when she was taking doing the test on me. And so, I kind of laugh now that it's all over. I'm living a very new, wonderful, inspired life. But I kind of laugh now and say, growing up as a little boy, I thought maybe I wanted to set records with throwing touchdowns or shooting basketballs. I didn't know that I was going to be aspiring to sell one of the records in the calcium scan area. And I understand it's not the highest that's ever been produced, but it's pretty high up there.
Well, and I would think too, it's a blessing you didn't know that number. How could you have remained calm if you'd known that number?
Couldn't have. No,
So good on
absolutely
her
not.
for not telling if you didn't ask.
Yeah.
Good on her.
Right,
So
right,
you
right.
find out that you have severe cardiac disease. You need
Yes,
bypass surgery,
yes,
and it happens within a couple of days. I
yes.
want to know what those couple of days were like for you. Were you already starting, because you made some big life changes after this? I think that when we
Yeah,
have these wake up calls,
right,
we're supposed to wake up,
right,
or something will come knocking again.
right,
And
right.
we're supposed to wake up to the possibilities of our lives, how we can impact others. What is our gift? Why are we here? So did that start immediately for you, or was there just kind of overwhelm and just trying to process? And also, maybe some fear. This is a very serious surgery. You're not in great shape to go into it. Were you scared?
I was extremely scared because the day that I found out the results was the day I was going to do the additional test to find out what's actually wrong with me. I remember the doctor saying that we need to have you do a heart catheterization. And he said, this was late in the afternoon. He said, we'll do it first thing in the morning. And I said, okay. And he goes, are you feeling okay? And I said, yeah, I feel great. Why? And he goes, no, really, are you feeling okay? I said, yeah, I'm feeling great. I said, why do you ask? He said, well, can you remain calm and go home and get some rest and then be up at the hospital tomorrow morning? So another area of asking me to remain calm. I was not calm. I was scared out of my wits. And the only thing I could think to do, Lisa, was to try to take some inventory on my life. I had never felt like I had to come to terms with my mortality, but I literally forced myself to say, okay, you could die very, very soon from now. So prepare for that. Get yourself mentally and emotionally, get yourself right with God. Do what you can to get yourself prepared for that. That took me about 2 days, and I was able to do that. And that just probably the biggest blessing right before I was being wheeled into surgery. But I was struggling to learn, what is it like? What am I going to go through? What am I going to experience? Is it going to hurt? Is it what is this whole experience that I'm embarking upon? You can certainly find.
Did they tell you that if this surgery was going to fix everything? If it was successful, what were they saying was your prognosis after surgery?
The prognosis is that it would buy more time in life. It was not, whenever you do this, there's no guarantees on what that means. It just means that we are going to bypass the areas that are clogged up. And I had one of my major arteries was literally 100% included. There was no blood flow going through it whatsoever. And that's another thing we ask is why is that the case? Why am I alive if my heart wasn't getting any blood? And they described to me that the heart muscle is the only muscle in the body that can actually form vessels to go around blocked areas. And so they said that's probably what happened to you over the years. You were in trouble, you didn't know it, and it started growing these vessels. So yeah, and the other thing too, I was a little bit panicked because I was thinking more about my wife than I was thinking about myself. Is she prepared for me to pass? Is she going to be okay? And I mean, little things like she doesn't really know how to fix the computer. I'm the IT guy in the family. How's she going to do that? I mean, I was just really struggling with this whole thing. And again, most of my anxiety was about her and my family, and less about me. Once I came to grips with my mortality, that was where my focus was.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about after surgery and all of the remarkable things that you've been led to do because of this very scary, yet now one of the greatest lessons you'll ever learn in your entire lifetime situations. Right. We'll be right back.
Absolutely.
We are back talking with Kevin Kirksey, author of Life 2.0, A Journey from Near Death to New Life. You have the bypass surgery, and you've spent those couple of days leading up to it, really, like you said, getting yourself right with God, facing your mortality, and also feeling worried for your wife. We think that we're prepared. We think we have everything in order. Ideally, we have everything in order. But I'd imagine going into that surgery, there was a lot to consider. Once you came out of the surgery, not just physically, but how did you feel? Did you feel like this was a wake-up call that you could answer? What was your thought process about steps moving forward from this lesson you've learned in just rapid speed?
Absolutely. Well, when I first woke up in the hospital, I do remember being reasonably happy that I'm alive, reasonably happy that I can look around and see people and hear things. So number one, that was
just waking up from surgery. That's one
just
plus.
Waking up from surgery. Boy, I feel like I accomplished something. In terms of my outlook and what I was going to be able to do with this, I was just incredibly confused. I had no idea. My mind was just a blank. And then I talked to other patients who go through this about this, because depression is very foreign to me. I really can't say that I've had any form of depression in my life, but I fell into, I'd say maybe beginning about 2 weeks after I had come home from the hospital, I started getting depressed because I kept thinking of myself as a broken man. I kept thinking to myself, they told me I'm a plaque maker. That's what I do really well. I make plaque, and plaque is not something that you want. And so I kind of fell into depression, and I didn't know what to do with it. And so I started just thinking about my experience in the hospital and thinking about all of the little things that all of the people, clinical and non-clinical, did for me, little things. And I've actually documented over 120 such things that I experienced. And they were—
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, I'll give you just a couple of examples. I mean, the nurse at night in ICU would have to check my blood sugars every hour on the hour. And so I wasn't really getting any sleep. And every time I saw her coming, I'm thinking, great, I'm going to try to figure out a way for her to give me more morphine because I was in pain. One day she comes in, she goes, what do you think the test result of your blood sugar is going to be? And I go, I don't know, 120. And she goes, well, I think it's going to be 115. Well, she was right, and she won that one. And so that started this game. And so every time I saw her, we would play this game, and I had completely forgot about the morphine. Dawns on me a few months later, what this young lady was doing was getting my mind off of the pain and onto something else. And God bless her for that. She didn't have to do that. She did that for my benefit. And so there was countless little examples of these types of things. And it started to occur to me that, these people, they put their lives on hold for the likes of people like me, right? And they give and they give and they give and they give and they never, ever, ever ask for anything in return. And so as I started to contemplate that, I was wondering if maybe I could perhaps think about living a life that was no longer focused on me, because growing up, it was all about my career, my education, my et cetera. Rather than focusing on me, maybe I can, it's possible to live a life based upon their example and their example of giving and not asking for anything in return. And so one thing led to the other, and I concluded this. I said, I do not want to be one of those patients that recovers from this. They go home, they recover, they go about life, and they're never heard from again. I want to prove to healthcare that they matter, they make a difference, they impact lives. And so the way I did that is I started eating right. I started exercising, a cardio workout twice a day, made sure I was taking my medications, made sure I took time to de-stress if I was stressed from work. And I think the most important thing that I realized is what these healthcare providers and caregivers were really doing is they were affirming my value, my relevance, and my importance as not a patient, but as a human being. When I thought about that, I said, maybe I could do that too in my life. And so I put a calendar event that's in my calendar today at 6:30 in the morning, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It says, live or die, ? Make the choice. And if I choose to live, which I've been doing every day, I never chose to die, but if I choose to live, it tells me I've got to do all the basics. I've got to exercise, eat right, et cetera, et cetera. But I need to affirm the value and the relevance and importance of another human being before I can go to bed at night. And I started living this life. I call it Life 2.0. And to me, it's a life I never imagined possible. I didn't realize the impact if you really put yourself in a position of trying to affirm others' value and relevance, importance. You get, I mean, watching them come alive. It's a form of love that we all can give. And so when I see that happening, I tell you, it's one of the best feelings I've ever had in my life. And so that's why I call it Life 2.0. It was something I wasn't doing before I had this surgery.
One of the things that I hear from you, when you're talking about this, you're showing up for yourself every day, but your compliance, your practice of compliance is also out of respect for the people who got you to where you are now.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I wanted them to know, and this is for all healthcare workers. This is not just that where I had my care, because I do a lot of speaking around the country. I have written articles and have them published on this subject, et cetera. But my big thing is I want healthcare providers, caregivers, both clinical and non-clinical, even the people that are in admissions, the people that do the valet service at a hospital, for example. I want them to know that as patients, we move on, we move forward, but we never, ever forget. And they're never left behind in our prayer. And I've found that by continuing to do this, serve this mission of giving back in this way, it's making an impact on others, which just like they made an impact on me.
You talk about the parking lot attendant. I remember I became buddies with the person I paid who gave my ticket, when my mom was ill, and I saw him there all the time. And one time I was leaving, I said, I want to pay for the 3 people behind me. And today we found out my mom's going to live. She's going to be okay.
Fantastic. Wow.
And I said, as long as you tell the people behind me, the next 3 people, make sure, please, you tell them that my mom, survived. And we got a second opinion that saved her life, and to never give up hope. And we were both like crying, and I get choked up now. And he said, I absolutely will. And when I came back the next day, he said, hey, everyone just kept paying the people behind them. Like this whole thing, nobody wanted to take your money. They would just give it to the next person behind them. It went on for like however many cars, he said, the next day. And so I think that man who was so cheerful every time I'd come in and out with so much stress, I wanted to share with him. And he just became a friendly face that made
so
it.
How did you feel about how the giving went to giving and went to giving?
You give in one space, you give once, and you think I'm just so grateful I can do that. And then to know that that's reciprocated in the ripple effect. That's what life is. It's that ripple effect that we get to give. And we have a choice in that every single day. And you make that choice I'm going to put a note to myself in my calendar, thanks to you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm so inspired by you, and I'm grateful to have found you. And I commend you and just ask you to keep up the good work and take good care of yourself.
Well, I hope this is helpful for your audience. I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today.